Welcome back. So, the polls were wrong and Benjamin Netanyahu emerged as the clear winner from Israel's general election. His right-wing Likud party swept past its main rival, Zionist Alliance, in a dramatic last-minute turnaround which defied the predictions over the last few days. Mr. Netanyahu will now put together with some ease a coalition with nationalist, religious and ultra-Orthodox allies. And what will his new government actually be like? Well, promises in the campaign not to allow the Palestinians to have a state, for more settlement building, together with his hawkish stance on Iran, all point to a fourth Netanyahu term at loggerheads with America and the rest of the international community. Well, let's go first to the BBC correspondent Yolande, who joins us live from Jerusalem. Yolande, over to you.
Well, this vote was being billed as a referendum on the Israeli Prime Minister, on Benjamin Netanyahu, after his 6 years in office. He faced a very toughly fought election campaign with the centre-left Zionist Union opposition really trying to push its agenda of social reform, focusing on issues here like the lack of affordable housing, rising living costs. But in the end, it was Mr. Netanyahu and his Likud party which have been pushing more of a security-based agenda, talking about the threat from Islamic extremism, the threat from Iran's nuclear program. Well, they came out on top. And what we also saw in the last few days of campaigning is Mr. Netanyahu coming out with more hardline policies, saying that if he continued as Prime Minister, he would not allow the establishment of an independent Palestinian state, also announcing plans to expand Jewish settlements. Of course, those settlements in the occupied West Bank and in East Jerusalem are seen as illegal under international law, although Israel disputes that. So what does the international community make of all of this? Well, to discuss that, I'm joined by Robert Danin. He's a former senior US administration official here in Jerusalem and someone who was also head of mission for the quartet of Middle East peacemakers special representative in Jerusalem. The quartet, of course, made up of the US, the EU, the United Nations and Russia. And Robert, if I can ask you, the quartet is committed to a two-state solution to end the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians. Now it seems Mr. Netanyahu is not. What does that mean?
It's going to be a significant challenge for the United States, for the other quartet members now to come up with a way forward. Nature abhors a vacuum. They're not going to want to let the situation just drift. You have a Palestinian Authority, a PLO, that's going to be quite assertive in challenging Israel in international fora. And so the only way that you're going to be able to counter that is through some sort of initiative. And yet, how do you launch an initiative when the Palestinians don't have the prospect of attaining a Palestinian state under the new Israeli government?
We're told by the UN and also by the EU that they're still planning to work with the Israel leadership on the peace process. I mean, is that something that is going to be possible? How will diplomats find a way forward, just quickly?
Sure. Well, what they're going to want to do is try to find a diplomatic process to launch. And Prime Minister Netanyahu will be receptive to that. He'll say, sure, I want to enter negotiations, but the international community will say, fine, but we can only do so with a firm basis for negotiation and a clear end point. And that's where there's going to be tension, because Prime Minister Netanyahu is going to say, no, we need to negotiate all those issues, but we've tried that, it didn't work, so I think it's going to be tough this time.
Well, Robert Danin, thank you very much. These are interesting times ahead. Back to you in the studio.
Yolande, thanks very much. That's the perspective from